Hello, welcome to the Elevate Your Profitability podcast, where we highlight business leaders who are helping organizations transform their operations to make them more profitable than they ever dreamed possible. Today, our guest is Tony Moroney. Tony is the founder and managing partner of Beta Digital, a specialist strategy and digital transformation advisory firm. He is also a co-founder of the Digital Transformation Lab, Cork University Business School, a think tank comprised of experts from industry, academia, and consulting. In addition, he is the program director for digital leadership at the Irish Management Institute. Tony's career has spanned both industry and consulting. He specializes in strategy, growth, and market development, business model innovation, digital transformation, change management, and governance, with engagements in the United States, UK, Ireland, which is his home, the Caribbean, the Middle East, Europe, and South America. There are not many places he hasn't been. Tony has a fascinating take on digital transformation and is an advocate for execution, focusing on the how-to and embedding it in the organization in the right way. Let's get to it. Hello, welcome to this episode of Elevate Your Profitability. I am excited to be joined with Tony Moroney today. Welcome, Tony.
Kathy, thank you very much for inviting me on the show. Delighted to be here.
Great. So for those of you who don't know you, why don't you start out with introducing yourself?
Well, look, my name is Tony Moroney. As you said, I run a company called Beta Digital. It's a transformation advisory firm. I'm also part of a think tank in Cork University Business School called the Digital Transformation Lab, where we look at all things digital. And I'm also a program director for the Irish Management Institute for Digital Leadership. So everything I do sort of centers around digital and digital transformation and digital leadership and anything to do with digital per se.
Gosh, sounds like you're a busy person.
Well, I tell you, this year has been particularly busy. I think everyone is coming out of COVID and the end is in sight in terms of the pandemic. It hasn't gone away, but at least there's a lot more certainty. And I think a lot of businesses are now looking at their own organizations and sort of saying, well, it's actually time to do something.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I've been finding a whole lot more interest among people that we talk to. And the whole COVID pandemic has just really raised the sights of people in their organizations that, we need to do something. We need to digitally transform our business. So it's been a good thing from that perspective. So what got you interested in? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I say COVID has definitely put digital transformation on the agenda. I would have a question mark as to whether firms really understand what they mean by digital transformation, but we can come back to that. But yeah, what got me into it? Well, look, I was doing a lot of work on strategy with organizations in different parts of the world. And over the last number of years, I noticed firms were more and more talking about digital transformation, but they were talking about it as if it's, we have our strategy and we have our digital transformation. And they were talking about this thing is almost separate. And I was looking at this and saying, well, no, it's not separate, because you have a strategy and your strategy should have a digital perspective, but you don't need a separate strategy, because that really would confuse your organization. If, well, here's our strategy and here's our digital strategy. Well, which one do we follow? It's one strategy and it must reflect, what's happening in the digital world.
I agree. So how did you get involved in digital transformation?
Well, mostly from working with clients. And as I was looking at what they were thinking about and listening to executives, this phrase digital transformation was coming up everywhere. So what I had to do was I had to stand back from it, Kathy, and sort of say, okay, well, what are we really talking about here? Because, I found in meetings, with boards and executives, digitization, digitalization, digital transformation, we'll throw in innovation as well. All of these words were being used interchangeably as if they were the same thing. And of course, they're all related, but they are different things. So when I started to look at this, I sort of say, well, actually, there's something going on in the world that is causing organizations to think differently. And of course, digital technology is, core part of that. But what I found was that the world that we operated in for centuries, decades, at least for centuries probably, it was predicated on a model where you competed with people in your industry. Whereas in a digital, hyper-connected world, well, your competition can come from anywhere. And your customer is also hyper-connected to everyone if they so wish. And that started to change the way you need to think about competition, because customers were being educated in terms of what was a good experience. And they expected that from whoever they dealt with. And that person or that organization may not come from the industry as you know it. It can come from somewhere that you didn't even think about. And what's happening is that there are new firms come along and they say, well, what is the customer trying to do here? What are the pain points? How could we build a great experience? And only then do they say, and how does digital technology help us to address that, to accelerate the solutions for the customers? But they don't start with the technology. And I find by comparison, what existing companies are doing is they start with the technology. They sort of say, well, there's all this digital technology over here. How do we bring that into our organization? Whereas a much better starting point would be, well, where are we today? Do we understand our business? Do we understand our customers? Do we understand the experience that we create for our customers? Do we understand how that needs to change? Because if we can do these things, we can then figure out, well, what do we need by way of technology? Because the last thing you want to do is just overlay technology on the firm, right? Because nothing has changed bar some of the technology. And then it's no wonder that so many digital transformations fail, because they never set out to transform. They set out to do a digital overlay, and maybe actually to do what they've always done, do it more efficiently, even if it's the wrong thing.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing that's really important, and my strategic partner and I wrote a book called No Nonsense Digital Transformation. And we touch on that, where we say, of course you want to know what the customer experience is that you want to bring to them, but you also need to have a mindset transformation in your business. You need to have a cultural transformation. You have to ready them to be willing to embrace that technology. And you need to come in. Part of that mindset change is going in and if you're going to transform someone's job, you want to go in and find out, what are they doing? What can we do to make your job better? And get their buy-in, and let them know, as a result of this transformation, you're going to be able to do more fulfilling things rather than all of these manual activities. So it's so important to get that buy-in. And then, of course, you got to have that buy-in from the top. It's got to flow all the way down. Right now, Michael and I are working with an organization, and at the very top level, at the board, they are excited about this. And the people that we're working with, some of the worker bees, they're excited about it too. So that's so important to have that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And look, you're right. If the mindset is wrong, that's how you think about the business. If that is wrong, well, the culture is always going to be wrong, because the mindset shapes how you think of the business and what you want to do. The culture is what you're doing day in, day out. And unless that buy-in is there from the top, it becomes apparent to the organization when it doesn't matter. This is just another initiative that someone up in the boardroom has decided on. We'll let this one wash out too. But I think there's another really important point there, and that's around this clarity in terms of, well, what are we actually doing and why? Because if let's be honest about this for a minute, when organizations talk about digital transformation, employees' immediate reaction can be, well, this is management talking about right sizing. They're talking about redundancies. They're talking about replacing people with technology. And sometimes that is what management have set out to do. But I'm much more in your space, which is if we're able to stand up and say, look, we really understand the business. We understand the customers. We know where we need to be if we want to be able to compete in 3 years' time. We know how we need to change. We know the type of skills that we're going to need, and we're going to invest in you and give you those skills. You're going to be able to do much more exciting work compared to all the things that are not so exciting. They'll be gone. We'll automate those because we want to upskill you. Now, is that something I'd be prepared to buy into? Absolutely. Because I now know the organization has a future and that I have a future as well. So I think how you frame this is really important.
Yes, I totally agree. So what are the benefits companies can achieve through embracing digital transformation?
Well, look, I suppose the very first one is, if they want to be relevant and competitive in the future, they need to transform, right? Because the world as we know it, and look, most organizations were born pre-internet and they're run by executives who were also born pre-internet, and the boards were probably also born pre-internet as well. So if you're in a world that is, changing very, very quickly, and you're not thinking about how you need to transform, you're going to wake up someday and find that your business is no longer relevant. So I would say the number one is to be relevant and to be competitive in the future. I think there's a whole host of benefits, though, in terms of when you start to think about transforming your organization, it forces you to be really clear on, well, why does the organization exist in the first place? Why are we here? Who are we here to serve? What are we trying to do for them? What do we need to do for them in the future? And if you can answer those questions, it's much easier to figure out then, well, how do we get there from where we are today? Because if we can answer those questions, it becomes very apparent then in terms of, well, what are the things we need to do ultimately? And that may or may not involve technology. And I think this is one of the fallacies. I mean, people talk about digital transformation, assuming it's something to do with digital. Actually, a lot of digital transformation is in the gift of management. It's around alignment. It's around culture and mindset, as you said. It's around removing those silos and roadblocks and all those things that stop our companies from delivering on the experience the customer wants.
Yes, I agree. And it really is looking at the big picture of what you're trying to accomplish and what's your purpose. And like you said, if you have that, then you can really define what digital transformation path you want to go. And you can define that customer experience more, and then you can create digital pathways and digital solutions that will help you meet those goals.
Yeah, look, the reality is, Kathy, a lot of firms are not clear on their purpose. And I think one of the things that digital transformation is a real opportunity for boards and executives to be clear on the purpose, so they can be clear on the strategy, so that they can create that vision and the buy-in for the vision, and that they can start to truly transform. Because this isn't about incremental change or about putting in a new system. Look, we've all worked in organizations or advised organizations, and they put in a new system that no one uses. Why? Because, well, no one was ever consulted in terms of what are we actually trying to do in the business, or what is the benefit, or what are the pain points for the customers, or indeed the pain points for the employees. Because if we make their life hard, it's hard for them to make the customer's life good.
Exactly. And that's the wonderful thing about digital transformation, is because you can improve that customer experience. They can get, say you've got a situation where you're automating, say, a loan process for a bank, and you can create, you can have a digital solution that will notify someone if they did not qualify based on their credit score. You can get, actually, it would be a customer service person that would reach out to them and tell that. That customer service person would get notified, hey, this person was not qualified, reach out to them. If they were qualified, then they can just get an email, congratulations, you've been approved for your loan, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's so many solutions, but that's just a small example of things that can happen.
Yeah, and look, I think one of the things that frustrates customers, bank customers, since you brought them up, one of the things that frustrates any customer is if they're dealing with an organization for a long time and they want to do something and they're being asked for all the same information again and again and again, right? But I've given you this information, 20 times already. Well, no, we need to get that form and we need this piece of information. The technology should make that experience seamless. It should say, well, actually, Kathy, we know you, we understand you. And by the way, DBS Bank is a great example. They got rid of the term cross-sell, and they now use cross-buy. And it's similar to Netflix. Customers like you, we're also interested in these things. And they get customers, looking to buy as opposed to them trying to sell. So I think the technology can great things regardless of what industry you are in. And Netflix, Amazon, Uber, all of these companies educate customers day in, day out on what a good experience should look like. I mean, I use Amazon all the time, and look, people have issues with Amazon, but what do I like? I like one-click purchase. If I want to buy a book, I just go find a book and one-click purchase. 2 seconds later, it's on my iPad. I mean, how easy is that?
it's just too bad not all businesses realize that that is the way to go. Because if they went that way, there'd be a lot more happier customers in the world, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think this is back to your question around why transform, because if someone else creates that experience for the customer, and well, the customer is going to go there in the future. So if you can't give them that experience and someone else can, and that someone else may not even be in your industry as you define it today, right? Your customers are gone, right? So I would say, understand the customer and the experience you need to create, and then start to work back from that in terms of how you transform. And yeah, maybe we need technology, but maybe we need to think about taking out all the handoffs, or take out the silos, or take out all the pain points that we put on customers. Because as we get bigger as organizations, we tend to specialize in different functions. And those functions are really good at what they do, but the handoffs don't quite work. And then the customer gets frustrated because, well, they're just trying to do something and the organization is causing all these problems for them. They don't care how we organize internally. They just want to know that if they want to do something, they can do it and it will be a great experience. And our job is to make sure that it is a great experience, all of us.
Yeah, exactly. So why do you think some companies just aren't ready to make the digital transformation leap?
Well, I think there's a few things. One thing that I am always kind of amused at is a lot of organizations, in fact, I would say most organizations, they haven't defined digital transformation. So, I go into a boardroom or an exec team and I put up a word cloud and I say, right, use your phones there and, give me 5 words that you think represent digital transformation. And I say there's 10 in the room, I'll get 30 something answers. And this is at the leadership end. So how do you think the rest of the organization interprets the digital transformation? So I would think, look, there's a lot of ambiguity. So we're talking about doing digital transformation, but we're not quite sure what that means. And no one puts up their hand because they think, well, this is about technology and I don't know about technology. Forget about the technology. This is about business. This is about being competitive. You don't need to worry about how to write programs. People can write programs for you. You need to understand what you need to do with the business model. And then you can figure out, what supports you need, be they technology or otherwise. So I think that's one thing. I think there's another thing in terms of, look, the biggest reason, in my view, why firms don't change is because they're being successful today, right? Why am I going to take on the risk of changing the business model if it's working? And particularly if the CEO has, 18 months to 2 years to go, they're kind of thinking, well, not on my watch, right? The next person can worry about this. So I think, being successful and having a status quo is very comfortable for a lot of firms. And therefore, we're not going to change with this model too much. We might tinker around the edges, but we're not really going to challenge ourselves and sort of say, well, there's 2 questions I always ask you. If you were starting again tomorrow, would you start where you are today? And the other is, well, if Jeff Bezos came into your market tomorrow, could you compete? Right? We don't ask those hard questions. We kind of say, well, wouldn't it be nice if we could add this piece on or do, tweak this a little bit? Well, that's not transformation. That's just, routine change in the business.
Yeah. We have one business that we've been talking with for a while, and they're doing well. Profits are good, but they say, well, we'll talk to you later. They're not really looking to the future. They'll get to a point where their competitors, they're going to embrace digital transformation. Some of them will anyway, and they're going to be left behind.
So, and I think this was the interesting thing about COVID, in that leaders were being challenged suddenly in terms of their business model. It's not working because we can't open our offices, we can't get our people into offices, we can't get our customers into our shops, whatever it might be. So suddenly there was this realization. Well, actually, the business model we've known for centuries, or however long the firm exists, that business model suddenly doesn't work. So we need to do something about it. Now, I have a big bugbear about this one. I hear all these, 5 years of digital transformation in 6 months and things like this. I think there might be 5 years of digital technology sales in 6 months, but there hasn't been 5 years of digital transformation. Firms did what they did to stay alive. So they had to deal with their customers online. They had to facilitate people working from home. But are they doing anything different than they did before? No, they're doing the same work. They're offering the same service. It just happens to be from a different location via a different medium. That's not transformation. To my mind, that's just digitizing what you've already done. So you've moved it from the office or paper to the digital worlds. Transformation, though, is around actually thinking way beyond that in terms of, well, strategically, where do we need to be in 3-5 years' time? Because even if we just look at the business today, we'll see, well, there's things happening out there that could make us uncompetitive. But if we look out 3-5 years, we might say, well, if that happens and if that happens, and we miss the boat, we have no chance of competing. Right, and that's a much better way to think about the world. I would encourage firms to think future back. So imagine the world in 2025, and then imagine how would we compete, and what would we need to do if we want to be able to compete in that environment. Because if we just look at the business and say, well, we'll add on a little piece here and a little piece here and a little piece here, that's incremental bits. It's not going to transform the firm. Whereas actually, what COVID did was it created a burning platform. But I think we need to learn from that and sort of say, well, we could change when we really had to. But now let's think about our business and sort of say, well, let's change because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. So what advice would you give to leaders who are not sure digital transformation is for them?
Well, I think, look, the first thing to do is to get real clear on your business. In terms of what the business is going to look like in the future. I think it's also about, don't feel you have to have all the answers. The answers are, within your organization, engage your people. And I'm a big believer in terms of, well, why not talk to all these digital natives that are in your organization and ask them about, well, how do you think this organization works from a digital perspective or otherwise? And start, getting, a sense of where can you take this organization into the future? I think you have to have alignment, right? Because if you don't align people or people aren't bought into where you're going, and let's say you and I are both on the executive team and, someone's talking to me today and talk to you tomorrow and they're getting different answers. Well, the organization interprets this as well. This doesn't really matter. You can ignore that. Or in fact, if all the people that work for me, I actually never talk about it. It doesn't go in their goals or anything else. I haven't said one bad word, but everyone knows that as far as Tony's concerned, it does not matter. So I think, the leader's role is to create that vision for the future. It's to get the alignment so that you get the buy-in. And it's also to be, stick the course, because digital transformation is not like, turning on the lights. This takes a long time because you have to change the mindset, the culture, how you think about the organization, how you organize your processes, the type of experience you want to deliver end to end. And that takes time. And of course, there will be setbacks. It's not plain sailing. And some of your assumptions will be wrong, but directionally, they should be in the right space. So you can sort of say, yeah, okay, we need to tweak that a little bit. Now, look, I think organizations for a long time have operated on the basis that, well, we have to be absolutely right all the time. Right? And it's not okay to fail. Now, look, I'm not a big fan of fail fast. I think experiment fast and learn from it, right? And do it in a controlled way. So you say, well, actually, we tried this with a small segment of customers and here's the feedback. So it's kind of like design thinking in action, right? I think that's a much better way to think about it. So okay, let's try this with, get feedback from customers. And, this really worked, but this part didn't work. They didn't like that. But they had great ideas about how we might address it. So co-invent with your customers. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. And, you can always work with a vendor and do like a pilot project. Just try like a small part of your business and try something out and see how it's working. And then, like you said, get feedback from your customers. I mean, there's just so many ways. That's just one idea of what you can do. And I think it's really important, too, that you talk to the right people. You do not want to just go on the internet and Google and find a digital transformation person. Yeah. Talk to people that that know people. Referrals to people who have done the work and have been successful and have a good reputation. I think it's important to employ the right people as well.
Yeah, but regardless of who you talk to, the most important thing is having the clarity about your own organization and what you want to do. And forget about the word digital. Put a red line through it, right? Focus on transformation. Now, look, we might use some digital technologies as part of transformation, but we're not transforming so we can use technology, right? We're transforming because it will make us competitive in the future. And we may use technology, but we may not, or it might be a combination of technology and other things. But be really clear. Don't go to a provider or whatever it might be and sort of say, well, we want to transform. What's your ideas? You want to be saying, well, look, we've thought about our business. We've considered the marketplace. We've considered, our digital maturity. So how digitally mature are we today? We have considered the level of digital maturity we will need in the future and how we will get there. And that means there's a whole host of things that we need to do. Now, we need some help in some of these things, some of these areas, but we know the journey we're on. We're not just going to, well, what have you got that's off the shelf which will help us? That never works in my mind, right? You need someone who's going to sit down with you and sort of say, I understand what you're saying. I can help you figure out what you need to do, but let's really focus on how you need to transform first. Because if you miss that part, you're straight into solution mode. And if there's loads of solution providers, it's not about solutions. It's around, having those breakthroughs by asking the hard questions in terms of why we're here. How do we be competitive in the future? How do we need to transform, right? Answer those first and then worry about, well, what solutions or what advice or whatever else you might need.
Yeah, exactly. Well, do you have any closing thoughts or anything, Tony?
Look, I suppose my view is that, digital is here. It's part and parcel. It's not separate, right? It's how we live, how we socialize, how we work. So, accept it's here. Accept that we work in a digitalized, hyper-connected world. Figure out what you're trying to do with your business, right? Don't get obsessed with technology. Figure out, for our business to succeed in the future, what would it need to look like and how would we get there? If you're asking those questions, right, you're in the right space and you can bring the organization with you, particularly if, the people in the organization can say, well, I can see why this will be a better organization, why it'll be better for our customers, better for our stakeholders, and better for me personally.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree. Well, Tony, how can people get a hold of you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. You get me on Twitter at Beta Moroney, and you'll get me at betadigital.net. Okay.
Well, sounds good. Well, this has been great. It's been so wonderful having you, Tony. I appreciate your time. And that's it for today. Everybody have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you for joining us for the Elevate Your Profitability podcast. We'd love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel listed below, or you can visit our website at kent.solutions, that's KENT.solutions, for more great content. Till next time, have a great day. Bye-bye.